Good afternoon, everyone. It's April 18th, 2018. I'm Eric. How's everyone doing this afternoon? I hope you're all well. So, throughout the time I've had a YouTube channel, I've maintained that shit hitting the fan would come about as a result of economic conditions. And we have seen our economy get worse and worse and worse ever since 2007, 2008, something like that. And the presidents, both Barack Obama and Donald Trump, love to take credit for things they have absolutely no control of, like the economy, like the market. And it's going to be Donald Trump's undoing. Now, during the election cycle, when it was he and Hillary Clinton, I talked about how the globalists didn't really want Hillary Clinton in there. They wanted Donald Trump in there so that he could take the blame for, well, the economy collapsing. And that wouldn't only be him that takes the blame. It would also be anyone who believes in the free market and capitalism. I believe in the free market, but there's a problem with capitalism, and the problem is corruption. So, but I've maintained for that time that I thought shit hitting the fan would begin with the economy collapsing. Or something like that anyway. It could be the economy collapsing. It could be our losing the petrol or the world reserve currency status. Could be inflation. It could be a lot of things concerning the economy that would get the ball rolling. And I still maintain that. I still think that the shit hitting the fan will be all about the economy. You gotta remember, all wars are bankers' wars. They really are the only ones who benefit from wars. I mean, yeah, a lot of these arms makers do too, but the banks own a whole bunch of shares in these places. So overall, the banks benefit more than anybody else from war. And when you look at any atrocity that occurs, whether it be financial in nature or violent in nature. You have to ask yourself, who stands to benefit from this? And then follow that trail. We follow that trail. Who stands to benefit from these two planes smashing into the Twin Towers? Or who stands to gain when 17 people are gunned down in Florida or Las Vegas? Who stands to gain when thinking about the Boston bombings? But you ask this question and then you follow the trail, wherever it leads. And if you can figure out who stands to gain, who stands to benefit from any one of these events, you've pretty much figured out who is responsible for it. So, several economic indicators have turned to the south at the beginning of this year. They clearly indicate a slowing economic momentum. This is something that was not supposed to happen. The tax cut by President Trump and the long-awaited recovery of Eurozone should have carried us to a new phase in global growth. At least that is how the narrative went. But whenever the government talks, you have to really think of the opposite of what they're saying. Because the truth will be closer to the exact opposite than it is to what they're saying. Almost always. In June of 2017, we warned that the global economic expansion is on its final leg and that signals from China and the U.S. indicate a slowing economic momentum. We showed that China is closing the limits of its growth model because its investments are turning increasingly unproductive, and its credit has grown to at unstable rate for several years. In the U.S., the credit impulse was in a clear decline, which in a mature business cycle tends to foretell of an economic downturn. At the beginning of this year, everything changed. China started to actively curb its excess credit creation. The quantitative tightening of the Fed started in earnest, and the geopolitical risks resurfaced. Thus, the main pillars of the global synchronized recovery started to falter. However, the main trigger of the sudden slowdown is likely to come from the zombified global economy. In September of 2017, we warned that the unorthodox central bank policies have created an ever-growing number of unprofitable, zombified firms. A zombie company is a firm that is unable to cover its interest payments from its operating profit. Stricter criteria also exists. The zombie firms survive if credit is plentiful and available at a cheap price. After 2008, the global central banks created such an environment with very low interest rates and quantitative easing programs. Now, when this credit, when these zombie companies are unable to get credit anymore, when that spigot is turned off, all the jobs that exist within these zombie firms will also be turned off. Now, we've already lost many stores this year, and are due to lose many more. I'm seeing this very thing happen here in the city I reside in. So, more and more places are closing down, more and more empty retail space, gas stations, you name it, grocery stores. So, at some point in time, I think this is the economic thing is more likely than either Trump or Putin nuking each other. And you know, if people ain't getting paid, or if what they're getting paid isn't worth anything, how many of them are going to continue to go to work? Now, I recall that the president, now, don't recall which president, I think it was a couple of them, ordered people to go back to work after or during a protest, and I don't remember whatever happened with that, but I do believe that there is some law on the books that makes it so if you're ordered to go back to work and you don't, you can be arrested. But if enough people don't go back, then what are they going to do? Okay, so it's these zombie firms, I think, that will end up getting the ball rolling anyway. What the zombie firms do is that they crow out the birth of new productive firms. A recent study shows that while the outright monetary transactions, or OMT programs, launched by the European Central Bank in 2012 improved the health of the banks on the periphery of the Eurozone, those banks extended these loans mostly to low-quality borrowers, to which they had a pre-existing lending relationship. This is understandable because if these quality borrowers to which they had a pre-existing oh damn, I just read the same fucking sentence. This is understandable because if these companies would have failed, they would have taken the banks with them. However, this also greatly increased the number of the zombie firms and obstructed the creation of healthy new firms by diverting bank lending to the zombies. So there's not going to be anything to take its place, or their place. Is that really such a bad thing, though? I mean, it is one of the main reasons the monetary system, or main ways that the government has the people by its balls, or should I say the banking cartels, or cartel. I don't think it's cartels with a plural. I think it's one single banking cartel. Perhaps at one time it was multiple, but not anymore. That's all just Rothschild now. The historical example of Japan shows that if the ailing firms are provided with cheap credit, the job creation is depressed and the overall productivity growth is hindered. And which would explain why, one of the reasons anyway, why we do not have much of a productivity rate here in the United States, or growth. It's because of there are so many zombie firms. And I'm telling you, the best thing that could ever happen to us is one of these giant, enormous events happen and change everything instantly, or plunge us into chaos instantly. Now, what would happen on the other side? That depends on what the people end up pushing for. Because even if they reach their goal of 500 million, that still outnumbers them by a huge amount. Even with only 500 million people, the masses still have the power to hunt them down and hang them. So, just as I said, more or less, the zombification of the world economy is visible in productivity growth. Since 2008, the total factor productivity has been in constant decline except the minor increases in 2010. This is the longest decline in total factor productivity ever seen. We can safely assume that the zombie companies created by the central bank policies are the main source for this, as I just explained. There was never a recovery, it never happened, and never will. There will be no recovery for the United States, or the Euro, or China after they collapse. It's not going to be a recovery. So they say the recovery that never happened, as I have, the global synchronized growth was nothing more than a pipe dream driven by the unsustainable credit expansion in China and the equally unsustainable bond buying operations by the global central banks. The fact is that the world economy never really recovered from the financial crisis. And which leads me to, let me see here. This. No bank left behind, or no Wall Street bank left behind. Comes from John Rubino of the Dollar Collapse. I come over here because this dude here, Donald Trump, our president, talked all about how these fucking bankers are criminals and should be arrested for fraud and all this other shit. And then he goes and pardons these banks for fraud, and then he gives them huge tax breaks. Now everybody is talking about these tax breaks as if they're some kind of godsend. I certainly haven't seen it. In fact, when we filed taxes, we were still penalized for Obamacare. So, times have been hard for Wall Street banks lately, with record amounts of cash pouring in and causing all kinds of bookkeeping headaches. So, big-hearted people that we are, Americans step up and help by lowering the bank's taxes. From today's Wall Street Journal, the 4 biggest U.S. banks made $2.3 billion from tax law in 1 quarter. Can you say transfer of wealth? Big banks just cashed in the first installment of benefits corporate America will reap from the new federal tax law. Not the American people. No. Corporate America. It was more than $2.3 billion. Oh man, it's unreal. I mean, you people, you just keep falling for it and falling for it, falling for the same shit. Okay, so that is the haul, more than $2.3 billion. That is how much the combined earnings of the 4 major national banks are. J.P. Morgan, Chase, Wells Fargo, Citigroup, and Bank of America increased in the first quarter because of the lower corporate rates under the tax overhaul law enacted in December, according to an analysis of the bank's results by the Wall Street Journal. it is a modest sized chunk. But still, and we're talking about people that lost shitloads of money and then turned around and gave themselves big ass raises with our bailout money, the money stolen from us. Without the tax savings resulting from the new lower corporate tax rate, Wells Fargo earnings would have declined from a year ago instead of increasing, and much of the year-over-year growth at Citigroup and Bank of America would be gone. So, without that intervention, the banks would have underperformed. The $2.3 billion boost isn't the entire story. For one thing, other provisions of the tax law prompted some of the same banks and many other companies to take big charges against their earnings in the fourth quarter. From that perspective, the first quarter boosts merely helped even things out. The journal's analysis calculated that each bank's results of the latest first quarter would have been if the effective tax rate from last year's first quarter was still in effect. So they're not even doing the calculation right. Each bank's tax rate has declined dramatically since then. Wells Fargo, for instance, had an 18.8% effective tax rate in the latest first quarter, down from 27.5% in the year ago quarter, applying a 27.5% effective tax rate to the latest quarter's pre-tax income would have shaved about $636 million off earnings, cutting Wells Fargo's diluted earnings per share to 99 cents from the actual $1.12 per share. So, war with Russia isn't over, or war in Syria isn't over, should I say. But of course it will lead to a war with Russia if they decide to be crazy fuckers and do it. And but there's also the issue of these tariffs. I'm not going to get into it in this video, but I will hit this headline right quick. China prepares emergency response plan amid escalating U.S. trade war. Of course, they have been dumping our treasuries. They've stopped buying them, along with other nations like Russia. They're not using our dollar as their reserve currency. They're using gold or their own currency. And there's other nations following their example. So eventually, we're either going to end up neck deep in war, and by the way, that our borders will not, our distance from where things are happening will not provide us safety this time. will not buy us safety, will not provide us any safety. The distance will no longer matters, and I venture to say that these nations probably already have people inside of our country. And I know for a fact China does. I'm pretty sure Russia does. So, anyway, I thought I'd share this with you y'all, because, like I said, the financial end of things in this world is really what drives most of our problems. If governments didn't have access to never-ending or the ability to print never-ending amounts of money, and they didn't have the central bank to manipulate the markets, the money wouldn't be there for these giant wars. So, it's always who benefits from any of this, and it's the bankers, it's the defense contractors, it's the people in Congress that have been bribed with stock in these companies. They stand to benefit. The president stands to benefit. But you, me, the common everyday person, we stand to lose, and a lot more than just money. So, it's gonna, this is really about your right to exist more than anything. The whole thing, from the economic standpoint, from foreign policy to domestic policy, what they're doing to you is destroying you. And they have so many different ways going at one time that it assures success at some point or another, that they will destroy you one way or another. If it's not through the economic decisions they make, it'll be through war decisions they make. If it's not through war decisions they make, it'd be through other medical decisions and shit like that they make. It does not matter what you do, one way or the other, they are going to end up killing you. That is the nature of the state. It is murderous. The state is a murderous Frankenstein. So, anyway, hope everyone has a great day, and remember, kill the state before the state kills you.